Hey, what's up, guys? So you knows best. This is the iPhone 10, and it is not what I expected. Now, let me explain why I feel that way. Now, it's been 10 years since I first held the original iPhone, and it's been a little bit of a journey. And I would honestly tell you that every single year when the new iPhones come out, I haven't always been extremely excited for them because especially those S years when they just really are making internal improvements, I really felt that the iPhone was lacking a little bit of excitement recently. And so of course I was expecting this to be better than the 8 Plus, but I wasn't expecting to get this type of refresh feeling where it really feels like a relaunch of the iPhone for the first time in a few years. And so as you can tell, this phone has a lot of positives, but it still does have some negatives, and I'm gonna cover all of those in a minute. But the first thing I want to talk about is the design of the phone, because when you first pick it up, it's gonna feel like one solid piece of glass. That's because they've added glass on the back of this phone, which is welcome, but it's just one more extra thing that can break if you do drop the phone, in my opinion. But Apple did a good job at seamlessly combining the front panel glass to the back of the phone with the way they kind of molded the frame to make it all feel just like one solid piece and completely smooth for the most part all the way around, even though the SIM card tray for some reason sticks out just a little bit and adds a little rough edge to the side of the phone. I don't know why that is, but everything else feels really fantastic. And also, just a side note, this is the first time I went with the silver/white version of the iPhone. And that's because the front of the phone is not white like it used to be in the past, which is good because the white back hides scratches and fingerprints a lot better than the space gray version. So that's a nice little tip for you. But just think about the overall design of the phone. I like the fact that it's not gigantic and huge like the iPhone 8 Plus is. And even though it has a 5.8-inch display, which is bigger than the 5.5-inch display on the iPhone 8 Plus, because you don't have the home button, and also they've gotten rid of as much bezel as they could at the moment, it feels like you're holding a pretty big display in your hand, but it's not going to take a lot of space in your pocket. Now, technically, the display on the 8 Plus has a bigger surface area compared to the 10, and that's because of the aspect ratio that Apple decided to use with it, which often causes the video that you're watching back that may not be formatted for it to have black bars at the top, bottom, and to the left and the right of it, which doesn't look that great. And then also too is due to that notch that's at the top. Now that notch can be annoying at times, especially when you're watching video pinched in full screen on the iPhone 10. But in normal use, just using it in portrait mode and going through normal things like checking my mail and all that stuff, I really don't find to be that annoying. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, this is the best display on a smartphone, even compared to the Galaxy Note 8. Now, both of them are pretty close, but I just think Apple has a really good way of fine-tuning the display when it comes to the colors and the sharpness of it, and really just making sure it stands out and is uniform all the way through. And Samsung does actually make the display for the iPhone, but Apple designed it themselves and really took a lot of time to make sure the first OLED display will be a really good one, and I think they definitely nailed it. But let's get back to that notch at the top. And this notch houses their true depth camera system. Now, this camera system is going to allow you to do cool things like emojis, which you've seen. And this allows you to use your facial expressions, like opening up your eyes and showing excitement or showing sadness, and it will animate itself into an emoji that you can send in a text message to people, or you can just save as a video and post on the internet. And it's really corny and it's really goofy, but it is fun to use. And it really shows you the accuracy of this system where you can open your mouth, you can blink, you can do all these different things, and you'll see the emojis kind of react to you. So it's a really cool thing to show off the tech, and it's fun to use. But the real reason why the true depth camera system exists on this phone is for Face ID. And so Face ID is aiming to be the primary way you use to unlock your phone. Now I say aiming to be because you can still elect not to use it and just use a regular passcode, but I think most people are going to want to use Face ID. Now the time when it does work, it's incredibly fast. You look at it and you swipe up from the bottom of the screen and you're unlocked into your phone, and now you're able to use it, even though I do wish that Apple allowed in the settings for you to have an option when you look at it and it recognizes you for it to automatically take you to the home screen. But for the other times that it didn't work, whether I'm outside in direct sunlight or I'm not angling the phone correctly, when I started to enter my passcode, all of a sudden it would recognize my face and just quickly take me to the home screen. So I would say that again, when it doesn't work, it's not too much of a nuisance, but I do miss that reliability of Touch ID, which worked probably 98% of the time. And that makes me wish that Apple would have launched Face ID alongside Touch ID. Maybe if they put Touch ID inside of the power button like some other phones do on the market right now, that would have been great. But I do like the other feature enhancements that it brings, like if you do have a text message notification on your lock screen, it's not going to show exactly what that text says unless you look at your phone and it recognizes you with Face ID, and then it'll go ahead and show you what the contents of that text message is. And so ultimately, most people will be just fine with Face ID, but time will only make it better. Now, the other major feature of this true depth camera system are portrait mode selfies. And this allows you to blur out that background and to keep you in focus and just looks really great. Now, these portrait mode selfies are similar to Face ID. They can be kind of hit and miss. Now, I find when they do hit, when everything aligns just right and it nails everything, it can be better than the Google Pixel 2 and also the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. But I did find it that a lot of times the edge detection, where it's trying to separate your face away from the background, it kind of kept a lot of things blurry, and especially with your ears or your hair and around the neck areas. And so like Face ID, I think software updates can help improve this performance, but for right now, it just falls short of what the Google Pixel 2 can do. Now for the rear cameras, they are mostly similar to what you find on the iPhone 8 Plus, where you're gonna have two 12 megapixel cameras that will allow you to do things like 2x optical zoom. But the one advantage that these iPhone 10 cameras has is that both of them have optical image stabilization. So when you do zoom in, you're going to be able to have a very stable footage for your video, no matter if you're moving or you're just doing a panning shot. Everything is going to be stabilized and consistent with both of the cameras. And just like the 8 Plus, you can record 4K video at 60 frames per second, or you can record 1080p video at 240 frames per second, which will allow you to use the slow-mo mode to really make very nice, smooth, slow down footage. And the power behind these new camera enhancements lies with the new A11 Bionic processor that is inside of this phone. And just keeping it brief with this processor, it is a monster. Benchmarking tests, it will destroy every other phone on the market right now. And it just really shows that Apple has been able to make their processors for this phone be fine-tuned to work with the hardware that they have and also the software on the phone to really make for a very fast, smooth experience. But speaking of software, let's go and talk about iOS 11 and how it works on this phone. Now, this phone doesn't have the home button, so how do you close apps? How do you multitask? How do you do different things? Well, this is why you're going to have a little bit of a learning curve when using this new iPhone 10. And so if you want to close an app, you need to swipe up from the bottom of the display. Or if you want to access multitasking, you need to swipe up and hold for just a little bit and let go, and then you'll be able to see all your open applications. But now some other gestures include accessing the control center from swiping down from the top right-hand corner of the display. And to get to your notifications, you need to swipe down from the top left-hand side of the display. Now, I do wish that Apple would have made these two different gestures span the entire length of the display. So on the entire right-hand side of the display, I wish I could have just been able to swipe down to be able to access the control center instead of having to reach all the way at the top. Because right now, the majority of the display is just used for one down swipe, and that will allow you to get to the search menu to be able to find apps or different things like that very quickly. But I wish that would just been regulated to the middle of the display, and then those other two actions that are regulated at the top of the display would have been able to been used everywhere else, and that would have made for a more seamless experience. Now, one way to get around this is to enable reachability, which will now allow you just to swipe down at the bottom of the display, and it'll bring down the display so now you can still, from the middle of the screen, swipe down on the left or the right hand side to get to those two different sections. And so it took me a couple days to get used to these gestures, but they quickly became natural, and now I find myself trying to use these same gestures on every other phone that's not the iPhone 10. And besides some annoying things like the camera settings not being in the actual camera app, and all of the display settings aren't where you think they are, you need to actually go to general accessibility and then display accommodations for a couple of them. I find that iOS 11 as a whole brings enough enhancements and refinements to really show that iOS is going in the right direction. And so that's the software. And a couple of the things about the hardware is that this phone does have wireless charging now and also fast charging, but you cannot fast charge out of the box. You have to buy the extra cable and also wall adapter from Apple or another third-party manufacturer. That sucks. But also this phone still is water resistant, so don't be afraid to get it wet. But now we come to the one question that everybody asks, is this worth $1,000? Well, ultimately the worth of any device is going to come to how you're going to be using it and how integrated it's going to be in your life. And I like to have the latest and greatest, so I will pay it. But you may not need to have the latest and greatest. You may not mind waiting a year to get the iPhone 10 at a steal once the next iPhone comes out. And in that case, the 8 and the 8 Plus cost hundreds of dollars less and are definitely really good alternatives to the iPhone 10. But if you do decide to get the iPhone 10, there's a lot of good positives about it, and it really gives you a really good sneak peek to the future of the iPhones. But with that being said, I am wrapping up this review. Thanks for watching this video, and make sure you follow me on all my social media networks and subscribe to me on YouTube. And like always, thanks for watching this video, and I will catch you later. Peace.